Hello everyone. You'll notice that the intro hasn't happened this week. Let's call it technical issues for now, but I think our old introduction might be dead, which is very sad. So this is just effectively a cold open. So hi everyone, welcome to episode 12 of Monorail Memoirs. This week we're going to be talking about a Disneyland Paris special. Lauren, you went there a little while ago, so you're going to be doing a lot of leading on this. I'll ask some questions because I haven't been to Disneyland Paris in about 9 years. So things may have changed slightly. But with that said, to start every podcast as always, Lauren, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good, thank you. It's been nice and sunny in England this week, so that's a plus. But yeah, just a long week at work has been finished and starting a new week soon. So it's all that to go over. But yeah, how are you?
Easy. Easy. I'm all right. For those of you who've seen other videos on our YouTube channel, you'll see that I was at Vero Beach, the DVC resort, earlier this week. I said I was going to do a room tour, but then my flight got cancelled by American Airlines, and so if I'm honest, I got a little bit sidetracked and ended up driving over to Typhoon Lagoon instead. So it was a whole thing, but the point is that I'm afraid there is not a room tour to go along with a resort at Vero Beach. So my apologies for that. But today, then, as mentioned, we're going to talk about Disneyland Paris. Disneyland Paris, which started as Euro Disney under Michael Eisner and ended up going through a little bit of a rebrand and a retheme, partly because it was a bit of a disaster. They realized that by putting the park in Paris or near Paris, the intention was people would stop off there from elsewhere in Europe for a couple of days as they transit to other places, whether that be down from the UK to Spain or whether it be from Germany across. There was two main problems with this. Problem number one is that when this was conceptualized and then built in the 90s, air travel ended up taking up much more, far more frequent after the fact. And so people weren't driving through central France because why would they be? So that was issue number one. Issue number two was the weather. The weather in Central Europe isn't great. And so as a result, you expect a certain degree of weather, a certain amount of enjoyment comes with that being in the parks through California and Florida that you're just not going to get in France. And so that's kind of a disappointing angle. So those were two of the main issues. There was other issues around different cultural approaches to work and who we had front of staff, etc. But that's just a little bit of a background. Disneyland Paris is now profitable, at least, and has been for the last about a decade, and that's taken a real shift change from where Michael Eisner had it originally. But Lauren, we're going to be talking a lot about your trip today, where you went, what you did, what it was like. So just to give people a broad out there, we're going to talk about when you went, how you got there, so your accommodation, what the park itself was like, and how that compares to Walt Disney World, and then also any food or snacks before you summarize in an overall experience. So with that said, then when did you go, Lauren, and how did you get there?
Yeah, so we went in April, kind of like in the Easter holidays. So it was very, very busy. Obviously not as busy as Florida. So we are used to the Floridian, 80, 90, 100-minute waits. But it wasn't like that. But obviously, I will come on to it, but things maybe aren't as polished. So some things that you might forgive Walt Disney World for, you kind of don't have that leeway in Paris. But so yeah, we went in April, and thankfully the weather was absolutely amazing. We only had one downpour, and we were in the car anyway. So it was all the weather was absolutely fantastic.
And so did
Which
you
really
drive all
helped.
the way?
Yes, so we live in the north of England, and we priced it all up. We priced it all up, and it was miles cheaper to drive down, ferry over, and then drive up when we got there. We had a few things to consider, obviously. The petrol, any charges to get through, like the what's it called? That big
Dartford Tunnel?
yeah, Watford
Yeah,
Gap.
the Watford Gap?
Yeah.
Dartford Tunnel's the other side. Yeah.
Yes, the Watford Gap, and all that sort of stuff. But we thought, yes, driving is probably easier. And it also really helped because we could then just take whatever we wanted. We weren't limited to luggage. We could take food, drinks, all that sort of stuff. So we actually made our way down on one day and stayed over in Dover. A top tip, I would always stay over in Dover and get the first ferry there because the hotel room for the four of us was only about £40.
Where'd you stay?
a travel lodge, and it was fantastic. It was great.
For our American listeners, a travel lodge is similar to a Motel 8
Motel
sort
8.
of effect. You know, it's a bed and a shower and does the job. But clearly, for 40 quid or about $55, it does the job.
Honestly, it works perfectly, because then that meant we could then get a very, very early ferry. We could literally see the ferry from the hotel. So we could get the earliest ferry, because when you book with Disneyland Paris, you book your accommodation, and the days that you have your accommodation, the days that you have park tickets, you don't buy park tickets separately. It all comes to one. So if we were to have got a later ferry, we would have had less time in Disney. So for 40 quid, it made sense for us. So we got a really early ferry over, which worked out really well. And then it was about, I'd say about a 2.5 hour drive from Calais up to where we were staying, and we stayed at the Davey Crockett Ranch, which for our American listeners is very similar to Fort Wilderness. It's the same sort of vibe, you know, cabins, a bit more kind of rustic camping vibe, but it was all right. It was, you know, what we needed it for. Obviously, being in Florida, and we usually use villas, you know, whenever we go over, we used to cook in all of our own meals and all that sort of stuff. So we thought, right, we'll get a cabin and then we can do all of that. That plan didn't really happen. We just stayed in the parks, to be honest. So whether or not we had a cabin or a hotel room, it probably didn't really make a difference. But it was cheaper. It was the cheapest option. And something else that's really good is you usually have to pay to park, obviously, at Disneyland Paris. But if you stay on property, then you don't. So we obviously stayed at the Davey Crockett Ranch, so we didn't need to pay for parking, which saved us, I'm not sure how many euros actually.
And so just to confirm, and we'll come on to the price towards the end, but you booked the whole thing through Disneyland Paris website, I assume.
Yeah.
And so that included your ferry, your accommodation, your park tickets, and your parking.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely everything bar food, essentially, and obviously fuel. But we only actually needed to fuel up in the UK. So we didn't need to fuel up at all over in Europe, which helped because we didn't really understand sort of how to do it.
It's a fuel pump, Lauren. It's put it in the car, pull the trigger, dispenses fuel. Yay!
Yeah, but they all have different words and all that sort of stuff. I just don't understand it.
It has different words.
In a petrol station in France.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason why being British gets you a really bad reputation in Europe, because we don't make any effort to learn any of their languages. We do French in high school, maybe a little bit of German. All I can remember in German is "Darf ich meine Jacke ausziehen, bitte," which is "Please, can I take off my jacket?" That was basically it. That was the summary of my foreign languages experience in school. So you decided not to fill up in France. Fine.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the accommodation for a minute. So, like, how did you feel the theming was of the hotel? How did you feel the service was? Like, you know, are we comparing this to an All Stars? Are we comparing this to, you know, what's the marker in the sand that we'd put compared to the American, the Walt Disney World system?
So it's really hard because I've never stayed in Fort Wilderness, but I have watched the Tim Tracker. I absolutely love his videos. Tim, if on the off chance you're watching, we love you. I know that he stayed there quite often, and it did look very different vibes, I have to say. More for English listeners, British listeners, kind of haven holiday vibe. So a little bit rough around the edges. The only way you could really tell it was Disney that there was a few Mickeys here, there, and everywhere. So yes, it's not what you would expect from a Disney resort. But then again, you're not paying the price for a Disney resort. The whole holiday cost me probably about 3 days in the Grand Floridian. So, you know, and that's just the hotel room on its own. You know.
Yeah, but 3 days in the Grand Floridian is an experience you'll never forget. So, you know.
Yeah, this is an experience I'll never forget. So a little caveat to my experience. So we initially booked it for my family of 4, so myself, my husband, and my 2 children. Now, a very lovely friend, Chloe, wanted to also come along. So we were like, yes, of course. The thing says it can sleep 6. So little did we know 6 was actually the couch. So
Oh, ladies and gentlemen,
an ensuite.
Lauren, we lost you. We lost you, Lauren. You have frozen. I will take over this episode now until Lauren returns from her freezing. She can just wave at me when she can hear. But one of the points I have when it comes to Disneyland Paris, and this is the point I can make irrespective of Lauren currently being frozen, is one of the issues I've always had with Disneyland Paris is. Lauren will jump in at some point, I'm sure. But one of the issues I've had with Disneyland Paris for a while has been the way in which the service is conducted is a little bit different now. Our Disney cast members in Florida are appreciated in the way that they used to be. Absolutely not. They're not paid enough. I was chatting to a member of the custodial team at Typhoon Lagoon when I was there earlier this week, and we were talking about how much he gets paid. And actually, one of the things I found fascinating was he actually has a second job. His second job is at Universal, because the amount of hours that Disney offer him simply aren't enough for him to cover his bills, and so he has to do 2 jobs, one in Universal, one in Disney. And I think it's probably fair to assess that Disney magic is a lot harder for the cast members to put forward when they are struggling from a financial perspective. As I look towards Disneyland Paris, I think that one of the issues, at least initially, was there was a bit of an affront to this American service style that simply isn't baked into how the European system works, partly because they don't rely on tips in the same way, partly because workers' rights are different. So I do think that was one of the issues that I had, or I have had, with Disneyland Paris is that system. Lauren, now that you're back, we were just hearing about the accommodation, the bed situation, the bed being a couch. Take it away.
Yeah, so obviously the sleep 6 meant a couch, and so we had a master bedroom, which was a double bed, and an ensuite, which was, small enough to kind of fit their bed in, and then just a small walkway around the sides, and then another bedroom which did have 2 single beds in. And then they were expecting obviously the third person to sleep on the couch, but I'm too nice, and so Chloe had the master bedroom, and we went in with the children, because we thought it was easier for us to just go in with the children, because we were worried that they might not know where they were, because they're only 2 and 4. They might feel a little bit scared, so we felt more than happy to go in with the children, which obviously meant for a slightly uncomfortable few days. But I think if we had got a bigger cabin, which obviously would have cost slightly more, it probably would have been a little bit better. So that was probably user error on our part. And also the user error as well is because we got a small cabin, we were at the very, very far end of the place that we were staying at. So when I checked in, he said, I'm assuming you've got a car. And I said, yes. And he said, good, because it would be a half an hour walk.
Half an hour?
Half an hour walk.
Oh, that'd be brutal.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind. If you were to ever stay on Davey Crockett Ranch, there is no shuttle, so you have to make your own way there.
Really?
Yeah, there's no shuttle, and also the cabins are really, really far away. So unless you are really, really good on your legs and you really like walking a very long way, take your car.
Wow, that is a top tip, ladies and gentlemen. If you're staying at the Davy Crockett Hotel at Disneyland Paris, take your car. That's fantastic. So how would you say that hotel compared, not necessarily in the specifics, but in terms of cleanliness, in terms of amenities, in terms of cost? How did that compare, do you think, to the Walt Disney World resorts?
Yeah, so you could tell that it wasn't America. There was that slight edge of a little bit more dusty. Maybe it wasn't hoovered 100% properly.
Vacuumed for any sponsorship issues.
Sorry. Apologies. And because I'm quite a clean person, I notice these things. But it wasn't unlivable. It wasn't to the point where I was going to complain or anything like that. They did have some nice touches. So Chippendale is the theme there, and there was kind of little Chippendales on the curtains. You did get toiletries as well, like mini toiletries, shampoo, conditioner, hand soap, something that I wasn't really expecting, to be honest. And it had all of your amenities, like a kettle, because it was a kind of diner area as well. You had a full working kitchen. So you had you didn't have a dishwasher, but you did have a full cooker with hob area, fridge, freezer, safe, all that sort of stuff that you would expect. But it was a very functional kitchen.
Whenever we go to the DVC resorts, because they all have kitchenettes, they all come with a dishwasher, but the dishwasher is called Cameron. Yeah, manual.
That is terrible.
But you were saying
it did have a little shop there that was obviously quite hiked up. It was quite expensive, but there is just a little round the corner, so that's just where we ended up going if we needed anything. But it really is accessible to the park. It does only take about 10 minutes to get to the park as well, which is really, really handy. You know, kind of coming out doesn't feel like a big, massive thing. You know, if you are quite close, you don't have to wait for a shuttle if you're driving.
Yeah.
It was quite good in that terms of access. But yeah, you could tell that it wasn't America, but it was slightly higher up than, you know, kind of like your bog standard hotels, I would say.
And so when we think about the park itself, because there's two parks, there's the Disneyland Park and there's Walt Disney Studios Park, which is currently going through a bit of a retheme and a rebrand. But in terms of those two parks, you did them both?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and so give us your verdict. How did you feel the parks were? How would you compare them to the American ones? And was there anything there that was sort of unique, that was worth the different experience compared to being in Florida?
Yeah, I definitely think that in the Studios Park, the Avengers campus is really something fantastic that they've got there. It's a massive boast that they have that I don't think America really has, to be honest.
Well, California, to clarify, the Avengers campus in California is my understanding is it's pretty similar, but you're right, in terms of the East Coast, it's lacking, yes.
Yeah, and they really did lean into that IP of the whole Marvel Avengers kind of thing. The rides in that section of the park are absolutely fantastic. They've rethemed what was Rock and Roller Coaster to I think it is just a generic Avengers ride, but again, very, very good. It's the exact same kind of thing as Rock and Roller Coaster. They've not changed any of the track or anything. They've just obviously just redressed it. And the Web Slingers ride as well. That's really fun. It's a little bit. So I have a little 2-year-old, and she was going like the clappers. She was loving it. She was flinging her arms around like nobody's business. And as soon as my husband realised that I was beating him, that was it. Everything was, you know, off the table, and he was like trying to do these web slinger things. So yeah, those rides are fantastic. They do have the classics like Tower of Terror in that park as well. Remy's Ratatouille Adventure obviously kind of originated there. It's a carbon copy as it is in America, in Florida. But again, that is also a very good ride. Toy Story Land is quite limited there. It's not obviously with the expanse of Florida. You know, you do have that option to really spread out. But I feel like they are kind of hemmed in a little bit in Paris. There was a couple of attractions there, but really good for the children. So, and they did have a few shows, but we didn't really watch those either.
And so that's, I appreciate that Walt Disney Studios Park is probably most akin to Hollywood Studios in its comparison. The obvious other comparison is that the Disneyland Paris park itself is most related to Magic Kingdom. How does that fare comparing the two?
So obviously Magic Kingdom, I mean, it goes without saying, is
the second best park going.
But for the price, you've always got to think about what am I paying for this? And for a British family, it is worth it, I would say. We are thinking of going back soon because it was fantastic and really, really good for the younger ages as well. It doesn't kind of age them out in terms of rides. They can go on almost everything. I was quite surprised to know that my 4-year-old was tall enough to go on Tower of Terror as well, which scared the living daylights out of me. He did not do that because that would just scare him off rides for life. I'm not prepared to deal with that.
I'll take him. I'll get him on there.
So I was very surprised to hear that he could go on Tower of Terror. He didn't, but he could. But yeah, I do feel like it is a little bit more geared towards the younger audience. I don't think you have the whole Disney adult to the extent that you do in Orlando. So I don't think they have to cater to that demographic as much as Orlando does. And you can see that in some of the things that they do there. It is a little bit more kiddie focused, which I didn't mind, obviously, taking a 2 and a 4-year-old. It felt quite okay for us to do that. But yeah, some of the theming is a little bit tired. Some of the rides are very bizarre. There's one boat ride that you just kind of go around on this little boat, and there's just like little figurines on the side.
It's a small world, is it, Lauren?
No, it's not. No.
What you have described is It's a Small World. You sit on this boat, you go around, there's little figurines on the side. That is It's a Small World.
It's a small world that's been shrunk on the outside, and they don't move.
That's kind of weird.
It is really weird. Honestly, it's so bizarre. You just sat on this boat and it's quiet as anything because there's nothing even really going on. It's not kind of encased in anything, so you don't have the atmosphere. It's just really bizarre. Really bizarre. But yeah, I would say it is a little bit more geared towards children. Unfortunately, one of the fantastic rides that I absolutely love, Big Thunder Mountain, was closed when we were there, being that massive refurb that they're all having. So that was unfortunate, but the Pirates of the Caribbean ride was fantastic. That one was really, really good.
Oh, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Phantom Manor, because Phantom Manor is the Haunted Mansion equivalent, but I don't know if you'd have done it because of the little ones.
No, we did, and we did it a couple of times. It does feel a little bit more creaky, and not in a good way. Thinking about Haunted Mansion feels a little bit more polished, I think.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, it is just one of those she just does that.
Either there's a dog there, or one of the 999 happy haunts happens to be on your couch, because I could swear a pillow just flew. No, that's good. So then it's not fair to compare Disneyland Paris to Florida for a variety of reasons, logistics, cost, etc. Well, let's just talk about the food for a second before we sort of summarize your overall experience. You ate in the park, which is kind of unusual for you.
Very unusual. So anyone that knows me knows that I am the queen of saving money. I'm the queen of what can we get the most bang for our buck. And I think that eating in Disney just isn't that. For Florida, we can just take our own food in. We can nip out to IHOP, get food for a quarter of the price.
There's a reason why when we do the food episode in a couple of weeks' time, my wife is coming on, because Lauren's not going to be of much help at all.
Absolutely not. So yeah, I'm a massive believer in not eating on Disney, essentially. But we did end up eating in Disney in Paris because it wasn't horrendously priced. It did have that hike up of Disney. You just expect that. But the food was actually really good. One of the highlights was on a quick service restaurant. We got a Mickey pizza, and it is a pizza with shaped like Mickey, but you can get that, a dessert and a drink, and it was only around €14, I believe. And
which for our American friends is probably around the $20 mark.
Yeah, and the pizza is like a full-size pizza, that you could share, and you get a Magnum with it, and a side salad, and a drink of your choice.
Side salad's a waste, and drink of my choice, dos cervezas, por favor. That means 2 beers, Lauren. You seem very confused. Yeah, but I assume alcohol is not included in that nice little offer.
No, it isn't, unfortunately.
And so yes, I appreciate there's always going to be a Disney premium in terms of cost and uplift for everything, whether that be merchandise, whether it be food or what have you. But let's talk about this as a whole package then. What do you have the number of how much it actually cost you and for how many days, or even a ballpark?
Yeah, I've got a ballpark. So for the 5 of us, so 2 children, we didn't obviously pay for a park ticket for my youngest because she was 2, and under 3s are free, so that's something to consider. But for 5 of us, it was around the 1,800 mark for 3 nights. So we had 4 days in Disney.
That's not good. That's not bad.
But that is for the ferry, with the ferry there, the park tickets, the hotel, obviously the parking on site, and the ferry home. I don't think that's horrendous. I think that's actually all right.
That's not too bad. It's not too bad. And so I have two last questions. One of them is what surprised you the most about Disneyland Paris?
Honestly, without sounding entitled, how much I loved it and how much I really enjoyed it. I thought the whole time I was going to be thinking, well, this isn't Orlando. This isn't Florida. Oh, they would do this differently in America. You know, like, because that's just what I'm used to. But we've already explored that, you know, the culture there is very different, and, you know, that kind of like the attitude sometimes can be a little bit different. But I do feel like it was really Disneyfied. I do feel like things have stepped up, because I last went around 10 years ago, I believe, and it did feel very different between now and 10 years ago. So I do feel like there maybe has been a culture shift, you know, kind of within how they do things, and that made it feel really nice, and that I would definitely go again. Obviously, it isn't Florida, but for the price, you can't grumble, I don't think.
Watch me grumble. My final question then to you is: would you recommend it to those of us like myself who are the Walt Disney World diehards?
If you have the money to go to Orlando, and that is absolutely no issue, you know, it's just like going to the park, you will not enjoy it because you will directly relate it. But for those of you who are thinking Florida is way out of my stretch of imagination, I could not imagine going there, this is honestly a fantastic place to be. I think that you probably need to do it once, even if you are a die-hard Orlando fan, because there are different experiences there. As I say, the Avengers campus is absolutely fantastic. You know, the food, even the food there is really nice. We did do a sit-down restaurant meal, and lots of things were Mickey shaped, and it was all very nice and lovely. Things tasted really good. Everything's really close in its amenity. So I would definitely try it. I'm not under any illusion to say that it's better or that you'll enjoy it more, but I do think it's definitely worth giving it a go.
Oh no, thank you very much, Lauren, for a recap of your trip. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I think there's a lot of some really good tidbits in there, especially around if you're going to stay at the Davey Crockett, have a car, for goodness sake.
Definitely.
Otherwise, that would be an emotional roller coaster on the way back. And if you do invite your friend, make sure that there's enough space for them first. Might be an idea. But that's going to do it for this week, episode 12, the Disneyland Paris special of Monorail Memoirs. There is a ticker going along the bottom, but Lauren's going to do. If you'd like to get hold of us, comment in the YouTube channel, email us, monorailmemoirs@gmail.com. There's Instagram, there's TikTok, and there's a link to if you want to buy us a coffee. That would be much appreciated. This is just a passion project. We spend time doing this, and we try and make it as accessible and fun as possible. With that said, though, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. Look after yourselves as always. And since we don't have the proper intro, we can still have the proper outro, which is, as always, please stand clear of the doors. Bye, everybody.
Bye.